Inside the cockpit of a multi-million-dollar jet, where everything gleams as if it stepped out of the future, there exists a word that sounds like the name of your next-door neighbor, Roger. Every time you hear a pilot say, Roger, it almost feels like they're exchanging the password of some secret society. The funny part? The origin of that word is so modest that if you told it to an early aviation engineer, they might burst out laughing. Picture this for a moment. A time when radio waves crackled like fish frying in a pan. Sound shattered. Words were swallowed whole. In that chaos, Roger slipped into aviation history through what can only be described as an organized misunderstanding. And once you trace it back, everything makes almost unbelievable sense. If you rewind to the earliest days of radio, communication sounded less like conversation and more like shouting into a broken deep fryer. Static overwhelmed everything. The word understood, longer than a miniature subway train, was torn apart by electromagnetic noise. 5 syllables scattered into fragments were useless. Technicians needed something shorter. So they turned to Morse code, a language built from just 2 symbols, dots and dashes. In Morse, the letter R stood for received, meaning I have received your message. And here's the clever part. It required only 3 signals, quote, dash, dot. So quick that if you blinked, you might miss half of it. Then, voice radio arrived. And with it, a new problem. Try shouting a single letter R into a microphone through thick static, and nobody can tell whether you said R or just sneezed. Aviation paused and asked a simple question. If the letter isn't clear, what if we say its name instead? That question sparked a small revolution. A phonetic alphabet was created to replace single letters with sharp, unmistakable names. And that's when an unexpected name entered the scene, Roger. What makes this story even more interesting is that once Roger entered radio control rooms, it did more than represent the letter R. It accidentally became a symbol of professionalism. Try saying OK in different tones. One day it sounds enthusiastic. Another day it sounds reluctant, like, yeah, fine, whatever. 3 small letters. Yet the emotional baggage shifts constantly. That unpredictability doesn't belong in an environment where milliseconds matter. Roger Wren, on the other hand, carries a steady rhythm. It's crisp. Most importantly, it contains no hidden emotion. When you say Roger, the only message transmitted is, I have heard you. And I acknowledge. Short, clean, technical. It's different from copy, which merely means you wrote the information down, not necessarily that you understood it. And it's definitely different from Wilco, short for will comply, meaning I will carry out your instruction. 3 words, 3 entirely different levels of commitment. Inside a cockpit, where 1 or 2 seconds can determine the fate of hundreds of people. Those subtle differences save more lives than most of us realize. Then Hollywood stepped in. Any character wearing a pilot's cap, headset on, staring into a sunlit sky inevitably drops a smooth Roger. Audiences heard it so often that it became automatic. Say Roger, and you sound like a professional. That perception quietly seeped into everyday culture. After World War II, NATO decided to standardize terminology. They updated the phonetic alphabet and replaced Roger with Romeo for the letter R. It sounded more modern, more precise, less ambiguous. You would think the change would spread quickly, like a software update. It didn't. The aviation world glanced at the revision, shrugged, and kept using Roger as if nothing had happened. The reason is almost unbelievably simple. Habit. When millions of soldiers, navigators, and pilots have said Roger so often that it becomes reflex. Changing it is like asking them to switch their dominant hand. You can teach new theory, but reflex lives in permanent ink. In their minds, Roger became sediment, a linguistic fossil. You can redesign the entire alphabet, but that fossil remains untouched. What makes the story even stranger is that today, amid satellites, multi-band navigation systems, and encrypted data transmission. We still use a word born from technological limitation over a century ago, a word created because radios were too noisy. Morse was too long, and humans didn't want to shout single letters into static. And somehow, that limitation turned into a symbol of modern discipline and precision. There's something quietly beautiful about that. After hearing this story, you'll never hear Roger the same way again. It isn't just a radio signal. It's a relic from an era when technology stumbled and struggled, yet laid the foundation for the world of flight we now take for granted. The next time you watch a film and hear a pilot say, "Roger," you'll know that behind that single word lies a chain of coincidences, improvisation, and the stubborn endurance of human habit. If you'd like to explore other linguistic fossils, words that outlived the technology that created them, just leave a suggestion. Who knows? In the next video, we might excavate another hidden treasure. Roger that?